Hey, what's good, fellow nerds? Nannu here, and today I'd like to talk to you about why Superman sucks.
Get ready to be Superman!
Of course, this is all my own personal opinion, and you're free to like Superman if you like. I'm just sort of trying to explain not just that Superman sucks, but sort of explain my reasoning for why I think he just doesn't work as a character, and why stories involving Superman just tend to fall flat for me. And I think I can sum up my objections to Superman and Superman stories into two broad categories: his powers and his personality. So first off, his powers. Now, it depends on which continuity you're reading, of course, but Superman has just way too many powers, right? I mean, even if we're excluding the more weird stuff, like his ability to freely travel through time, or his ability to mind control people, or at least, control their memories through kissing, if we ignore the weirder stuff and just focus on his core central powers, I still think he's got a little bit too many. Heat vision, X-ray vision, super cold breath, super strong breath, super strength, super speed, super hearing, super smell, super fast absorption of knowledge, incredibly high intelligence, knows every language on Earth, is invulnerable and basically immortal.
That enough exposition for you, or shall I go on?
He can fly. He can survive in the vacuum of space without the need of any sort of breathing or pressurized equipment. His clothes, with the exception of his cape, are also invulnerable. And there are other superheroes who, while they may not have the same level of powers as Superman, are certainly very strong, but they still have interesting stories because their great levels of power sort of offset by certain weaknesses and stuff. And what is Superman's actual weaknesses? Well, true comic book fans will tell you that there's basically two, right? The biggest weakness, the one that we see the most often, is of course kryptonite, which is a pretty terrible plot device, a sort of almost a whatever the opposite of a Deus Ex Machina would be.
Diabolus in machina.
But the problem is with kryptonite is that it varies greatly in terms of how much of a weakness it actually is. Like, for example, in Smallville, even a small fleck of kryptonite, yards away from Superman, is enough to completely incapacitate him. Whereas in Superman Returns, for example, he can lift a literal island of kryptonite and fly through the air. So, the whole kryptonite thing is very much a sort of up in the air on how big of an actual weakness it actually is. And of course, we've also got magic, which, again, depends on the continuity. In some continuities, magic is super effective against Superman, and in other continuities, it's completely ineffective against him. And of course, there's other minor weaknesses like, being in the presence of a red sun or being starved from the sun for too long. But ultimately, my point is that Superman is just too strong and too all-powerful for there to be any sort of real narrative tension. You see, Superman is basically bad religious fan fiction. The original writers of Superman, Joe Shuster and Jerry Siegel, envisioned him as basically a stand-in for God. And in a similar vein, God is an incredibly boring fictional character because there can't be any tension when you're both omniscient and all-powerful.
Historical fun fact.
All of the best Superman stories tend to ignore Superman's greatest strengths, or at least, nerf his power level substantially, or will massively ratchet up his weaknesses. So Superman's incredible level of power basically robs all tension from any sort of narrative. And that's literally like the foundation of all storytelling. But theoretically, you could still make an all-powerful character interesting if they had a personality. And the problem is Superman doesn't have a personality. And neither does Clark Kent. I mean, I've seen some Superman apologists, try to frame Superman as like, more tortured or emotionally complex individual, but he's just too good to be interesting, much in the sense that having weaknesses or, sort of gaps in your power makes you interesting from a strength sort of perspective. Having character or emotional flaws makes you interesting as a character. And that's the problem, is that Superman isn't really allowed to have character flaws, at least not in any sort of mainstream continuities.
Basically, what I'm saying is that Superman is a Mary Sue.
For example, if Superman, did have a little bit of an ego, and if in Batman v Superman, for example, Batman's fears of a totalitarian, fascistic world ruled by Superman would be justified. But the way Superman is written is that that's not even on the table as a possibility. But I think we're talking a little bit too much about Superman here. What about his alter ego, Clark Kent? Clark Kent is basically the same sort of vanilla, boring character with no real personality flaws or even really any personality, period. I mean, what is Clark Kent? Oh, well, he's a reporter. Is he like super into truth or like, finding, what? No, because again, there's no obstacles for Superman or Clark Kent. He's a god. I think some people think that Clark Kent is more relatable because he comes from like small town America. And I mean, you can feel that way. That's totally valid. But my concern is that if this was played straight, like this was actually a small town country boy, Superman would be a lot more problematic than he actually is. I mean, that's not to say that he doesn't have his issues. Like, for example, while in the context of his stories and the way he's written, he's presented as basically flawless, when you sort of transpose Superman into the real world, you start to see that there's a lot of problems. The fact that Superman is so willing to abide by the unjust laws of our current society, by the horrible exploitative inequalities that is happening in African and South Asian countries, the fact that he's more willing to step back and allow these harmful and exploitative processes to happen means that while technically he's considered to be lawful good, he's actually kind of lawful dumb. For a more specific example, take Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, in which he very kindly and gently and politely asks the nations of the world to voluntarily give up their nukes. Now, ultimately, in the movie, everyone decides to do that. And that's good. We made the world a more peaceful place. Thanks, Superman, you did it. But what if one of the countries decided not to do that? What if one of them decided to hold on to their nukes? What would Superman have done? Now, I mean, whatever. I didn't write Superman 4, but from my understanding of the character, he would have either allowed everyone to keep their nukes at that point, or only one country would have had nukes. Now, granted, Superman's so powerful he could stop any nuke before it landed, of course, whatever. Again, no tension in any Superman story. But I think that underscores one of the big problems of Superman, is that he's too willing to go in with the current order. And it's sort of almost by design. You see, one of Superman's core values as a character is the American way.
Put a boot in your ass and say
Which, if you've got blind faith in the goodness of America, if you're a, completely brain-dead, quote-unquote patriot, then yeah, Superman seems great. But the fact of the matter is, the fact that he's unwilling to personally step in and stop all of these horrific atrocities that are happening nonstop around the world, all the genocides, all the shadow wars, it goes on and on, all of the starvation deaths, Superman is too complacent. And he's too powerful. And he's too boring. And that's sort of just the general problems of Superman. I could, of course, go more into depth about how a lot of the supporting cast is bland and uninteresting and doesn't, like Clark Kent, doesn't have any real personality, or that his rogues gallery falls into one of two categories: either complete ridiculous non-threat like Lex Luthor, who would be a much better Batman villain, obviously, or it's just somebody who's also big and tough and strong and they're gonna punch each other out, like Goku versus Frieza or something, Ugh, and don't even get me started on Dragon Ball Z. There's no narrative tension. There's no character flaws. There's no character development, motivation, or growth. There's nothing to really, at least for me, to sink my teeth into. And that's why I think Superman sucks. But hey, maybe I'm completely wrong. I haven't read every Superman comic. I've seen, I think, most of the movies and most of the DC animated projects. But, maybe I'm missing something. And I do think there are some good Superman stories. Basically, the only ones I can think of off the top of my head are the ones where he's explicitly the villain. Because, of course, Superman works way better as an antagonist than a protagonist. He's a much better villain than a hero. But hey, maybe I'm completely wrong. I don't know. You tell me. And, hopefully you enjoyed this video, and catch you next time. Peace out. God, there's so much more stuff, too, I could have even talked about. Like, the fact that, Superman is so bland and interesting, you can just basically copy him as a girl, or a dog, or as another boy. And it basically changes nothing.